Good evening and welcome to the Season 12, Episode 13 After Show, a post release discussion about the latest episode of Monsters Among Us. I am host and creator Derek Hayes. Welcome, my one guest thus far, and hopefully many more after that. I don't know what I'm doing here. I'll be quite honest with you. I'm trying to take advantage of this new app, this new Wisdom app that quite frankly, I see a lot of potential in. I've been looking for something similar to this for a very long time so that I can communicate, that I can interact with the listeners in a post episode manner of some sort, so that we can further the discussion about some of these calls that we received the week prior, and get some further insight, get explore some different options, and to hear from some of the listeners out there like you that have been tuning in all this time. So bear with me. I'm still trying to figure out this app. This is the first time using this, so please bear with us on that. And I don't know how this works exactly, but you can actually feel free to join me. You can chime in here if I can figure this out exactly. You can actually, I think, raise your hand or something like that, and I can call on you. We can have a quick discussion. So if that's something that you're interested in doing, I think that is open right now. So either way, we're going to get moving on here. And to start us off, we're going to hit some questions. I had some call-ins and some questions from social media that we're going to tackle here before we get started. So the first one is from Roger Martinez, and this is via Facebook. And he says, how did Derek come up with the idea for the voice of the show? That's what hooked me when I heard him for the first time. Keep up the good work. Thank you, Roger, for that. I'll be honest with you. The voice is kind of a thing that people talk about a lot. It wasn't necessarily a conscious choice. It's, I'll be honest, also, it's my voice. I mean, it's my reading voice. It's my presenting voice, I suppose, radio voice, some people call it. It really stemmed from me enunciating. I have an issue where I mumble, apparently, or at least that's what my wife says all the time. So when I started the show, I was trying to speak in a way that was very clear, very precise, and nobody had any problems understanding what I was saying. And that sort of evolved to what we hear now. That's the slow cadence, that's the over pronunciation of some words. It all stemmed from a nervousness that I was mumbling or that I couldn't be understood. And people talk about how deep the voice is. When you're alone in the podcast room, you have a microphone in your face, it's easy to just kind of relax and you just start talking a little slower. And the next thing you know, you're slipping into this pseudo character, I suppose, that ends up running the show. So none of this is a conscious choice. None of this is a fake choice. This is all, it's my voice. This is how we go. So hopefully that answers your question there, Roger. And it looks like we have a guest waiting, so I'm going to try to figure this out. 1 second. Okay, Wanda. Wanda, are you there? Looks like she's coming in right now. Hello, Wanda.
Hey, Derek.
Hi, how's it going?
It's going. This is my first time on this live podcast. I've never caught you on a live thing before. I've been
Ditto.
binging your podcast, The Monsters Among Us. I love it. It's
Thank you so
awesome.
much for tuning in. Where are you calling from?
Georgia, Augusta, Georgia.
Awesome. Beautiful down there.
Yeah, it's a little cool right now, but I'm sure not as cold as it is where you are.
Well, I'll be honest with you. We have a snowstorm that's about to begin any minute. And the last I checked, it was 20 inches expected. So, yeah, it's chilly here.
Yes. Well, it's cool here, but not that cool yet. I probably won't get that cool. Are you doing stories tonight?
If you have a story, I'd be happy to hear it. There
Well,
is a time limit on the call. I will let you know that.
okay, I'll make it quick. I have a lot of stories, but this is a really good one. As a matter of fact, I have an EVP I would like to send you.
Oh, please do. Yeah, I definitely
Yeah,
want to hear that.
so I will try to. I'm not very technologically whatever, so I will try to get that to you. But here's my story. There is a little town, not too far, maybe half an hour from me. It's called Boneville, Georgia, of all places.
Beautiful name.
Isn't it though? It's near Thompson, Georgia, and back in the 1800s, there was a bed and breakfast there called the Old Dixie Inn, also known as the Smith Inn. And I couldn't find a lot of background on it, but back back about between, I guess, maybe 2008 and 2011. We would go up there. There's a group of us that would go up there, and it was well known to be haunted and investigate. But I really didn't know the backstory behind it. But I've always been like a sensitive kind of person, and I've had many experiences even as a child. But I had been there before and got some EVPs. And my nephew, who was an adult at the time, he was, in his 20s, he wanted to go. And we went up there during the day. It was in the summer, and it was very hot. It's very hot here in Georgia in the summer. And we had gone in, and this place had been, some vandalized graffiti and stuff. And it was very open, no electricity, no anything. But I had showed him around the bottom floor, and we went upstairs and to a bedroom where I had gotten EVPs before. And I turned the recorder on, and we went out, and we walked around some more in the house, and then we went and walked on the grounds. And they had like a dry cellar underneath the house. We went and did all that. And we came back in, and I got the recorder. I was going in to get the recorder. We were going in that room. And as I stepped through the room, it was so blazingly hot. I just made the rock, gosh, it's hot in here. And so we took my tape recorder, which had it's one that has a little tape in it. And my nephew took it with him and he has one of the programs that takes the background noise out.
Oh, yeah.
So he had played it and listened to it, brought it over to my house and said, put on headphones. I want you to hear this. And I said, well, tell me what I'm going to hear. He said, no, you just need to listen to it. So I said, okay. So you hear us walk in and you hear me say, gee, it's hot in here. And then you hear a pause and a little girl said, she said it's hot in here. There's absolutely nobody else around on the property, nothing. So then there's a pause and you hear a man say, shut up.
Oh, wow.
And that's it. But then I heard after all this, I didn't know anything about a little girl or any of the story behind it. But after that, we'd heard numerous people that say they see a little girl. She usually peeks from behind the closet door. But I have never seen her. I got the EVP, and I've had many photographs of things and stuff before. It's really interesting. I seem to have picked up my stuff with pictures or EVPs and, things like that. So it's really cool. You can find the information on the internet. I'll try to send you some of that information too. But the place has since burnt down in 2013. And it was in the paper. It was very mysterious about that too, because there was no electricity, no arson. They couldn't figure out what caused the fire, but it totally burned to the ground. So it's no longer there. But it was a very interesting place. It just like reeked of evil.
Wow.
As soon as you stepped on the porch and went to step through the doorway, it was just like this overwhelming sense that bad things had happened there. Yeah. But it was a place for elite. They would come in on the train and get off and stay there, and there was a lake across the street from it, and they would do boat rides. So it was really neat. It was a neat place. I just hate this burned down, but I've been wanting to call and tell you the story, but I haven't gotten the nerve up till now.
Well, you did an excellent job. It's a great story. I love the fact that there's history to the evidence that you caught. You caught an EVP of a young lady saying something, and there's history or there's reports of a ghost little girl that's peeking around corners. So, that kind of ties in right there, as well as, the history of the place. You said it's, they gave boat rides and stuff. So any place like that seems to hang on to spiritual energy for some strange reason.
Oh, and, yeah.
It all seems to kind of tie together. Wanda, it sounds like you do a lot of investigating. Can I ask you, what was the scariest EVP you got? What did the voice say?
Well, it was actually from the same place, and I don't know where that tape is because we've moved since all that, and, it's just
I get it. Yeah.
A lot of stuff. I'm in my 50s now, so we got accumulated a lot of stuff, but actually I had the recorder there one time. I was with a group of people that did some investigating like that, and actually, I have a couple of places in the one tape where a man is saying, get out.
Nice.
It says that about 3 times in that tape, but this is a totally different one. I don't know if it's the same man's voice, but, I always felt like there was just some kind of evil presence there. It was a very disturbing feeling when you go there. So
Awesome. Well, if you can, send me the EVPs, and I'll certainly post them on our social media or anywhere I can get them posted.
Okay, yeah. Should I just send it to that to the
Yeah,
go to
just
my
send them to Monsters Among Us podcast at gmail.com, and I'll make sure we get them.
awesome. Thank you so
Awesome.
much. I will send those tonight.
Sounds good. Thank you, Wanda. We appreciate it.
Thank, thank you so much. Keep doing a good job. It's a great show.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you. You too. Bye bye.
Okay. Bear with me. I'm still trying to figure this thing out. Looks like we have a new guest coming in right now, and is Margaret. Welcome, Margaret. Margaret, are you there? Okay. Something's not working there. All right. That one didn't work out. Margaret, if you can hear us, try calling back. Okay. Well, while we wait on another guest to come in, and again, reminder that we can talk about the latest episode. We had we had a Loch Ness monster sighting. We had a big black dog sighting by one of our admins, Sarah, actually, and there was a Mirrored Men sighting last week too. So feel free to ask questions about that or bring up the past episode as well. And while we're waiting, let me jump over to my bank of questions here. And the latest one here is from Jessica from Facebook. And she wants to know if I ever feel seriously freaked out or afraid listening to some of the submissions. Um, yeah, it happens from time to time. And I spoke about it on the show. One of the ones that really come to mind was the gentleman's name is blanking on me, but he was from Ohio and he was driving with his young son in the back of the vehicle. And the young son yells out, "Look at all those people!" And he points to a cemetery that's devoid of people. There's nobody out there. So he goes on to discuss that. That was one of the spookiest calls I got, and the other one was from man, I can't remember her name either, but she was from the Pacific Northwest. She was driving down the freeway, and there was an accident, a fatal accident ahead of her, and apparently the woman that died in this accident somehow ended up in her vehicle for a few moments. They had a brief conversation, and the woman passed on. And I'll be quite honest with you, the stuff that freaks me out the most is the stuff that makes you question your own existence, that makes you face mortality. And both of those calls did for me. I talk on the show all the time. I'm not a religious person, so in my mind, when we die, we're probably done. That's probably all we have. So when you hear stories like that, it kind of shakes me a little bit. It makes me question what I think I thought I knew, if that makes any sense. So those are the ones that spook me out the most. I love a good monster story, but uh, distance, I think, is what gives me comfort. If you hear a story about the Beast of Bray Road, well, that's in Wisconsin. I live in Southern California. I'm probably safe. So it's easier to hear those and just move on with your life. But yeah, that was a great question. Actually, there's a couple follow-ups here from Jessica. Other accounts that I feel are unbelievable. Yeah, there are on occasion stories that I think are just so outlandish that if they're true, they're some of the most amazing paranormal entries of all time. There's little tells that people give that let me know whether or not I think a story is legitimate or not. And 9 times out of 10, I'll mention that when I play the call, and I try not to hold those back because I think it's important to hear what some of those sound like, without going into too much detail there. And let's move on to the next question here from Ash on Facebook. And who or what is my favorite cryptid? And what if I had a chance encounter? Would I take the risk? Yeah, 100%. I don't care what the creature. Well, I spoke too soon. I have a I have a thing with water. I'm not a big water fan. Open water, we have kayaks we take on the lake, and I'm freaked out 99% of the time we're out there. So I guess if I'm out on the water in that situation and some sort of lake monster shows up, I'm probably not going to feel too good about it. Outside of that, I welcome anything. I'm an open receptacle, open to any sort of contact that anything wants to try to make. And I think I hesitate to say I think, but sometimes I feel like things actually do try to make contact from time to time. But to do the first part, my favorite cryptid, it's got to be the Dog Man. It still, for some strange reason, really resonates with me. I grew up loving werewolves. I grew up loving horror films, and it's just kind of an extension to that. And it kind of gives you a glimmer of hope that some of that stuff might be real, as terrifying as it is. So for me, that has a lot to do with why that's my favorite. And I grew up in the Midwest too, and that's where the Dogman's primarily seen, or at least that's where a lot of the reports seem to be coming from. So it's kind of a hometown monster. And if I had to give a runner-up, Mothman, because I grew up right there, right next to it. Do we have anybody coming in? No, looks like we're still clear there. So we're going to move on to our next question here, and this is from Sad Wolf on Instagram, and they want to know. They want me to discuss theories of why I think Bigfoot is so elusive. This is a really good question, actually, because if it's real, then that's a fact. It's elusive. It's near impossible to see, let alone capture or capture evidence of. And my thought there would be intelligence. That's got to be the reason. It's a very intelligent creature if it does exist, and that allows it to remain hidden. It knows to hide its tracks. It knows to stay downwind. It knows to do all these things. If there's a creature out there that does that, then with high intelligence, of course, then I think it's something that could easily hide and stay undetected. Um, it's a strange theory if you think about it, but let's say they're similar to human beings in their intelligence, or maybe equal to, and instead of devoting all that time to science and culture and art and all this stuff, they just simply forage and hide. That's the two things they do. They don't have art, culture. They don't explore things. They just have their primary functions. The basic things that keep them alive. And I can't help but think that if they were a highly intelligent creature, they may be able to thrive in small pockets. Now, do I think that they're in every state? That's a stretch. They could be traveling through, they could be passing through, maybe a wandering juvenile, something like that, comparing them to other creatures that are similar in size and living in similar locations. But again, these are all theories. These are all ideas just based on dozens upon dozens of entries that I've received over the years. So, but that's a really good question, Sad Wolf. Thank you. So let me ask everybody if there's anybody who wants to chime in. Did anybody have a favorite story from last week's episode? If so, what made that their favorite episode? Or I'm sorry, what made that their favorite story? Like I said, we had some pretty good ones last week. The Laugh in the Woods was a pretty spooky one as well. And of course, something bit Renee's finger in Alaska. So I'd still like to know what that is. After I released the show, I had a thought the other day that it may have been a praying mantis. Really quick story. I used to play JV football in high school, and my second cousin was on the team. We were talking one time, and we found a large, very large praying mantis out on the field. We didn't play all that much, so we were playing around with it, and that thing took a huge chunk out of his finger, which surprised us both. We did not know that they were capable of doing that, but he was bleeding everywhere. Had to, go get it taken care of. So those creatures have the capability of inflicting damage. So maybe there was a praying mantis hiding in that flower and just kind of struck out at her finger when she was reaching it out there. That was one thought that I had after the show. So let's venture back to our question bank here. I got a couple more. Vanessa wants to know, has a story ever left me completely spooked, which we touched on there a couple questions ago. But she has another follow-up and wants to know if any of the weird stuff that was happening in my house has stopped. And I guess I'm happy to report that it has stopped. Essentially, ever since the studio has been finished, which has been several years now, I haven't noticed anything strange or unusual around here. No odd messages in my head, no moving objects, no strange sounds. So if there was something here, it has left, has moved on, or possibly it was a result of the atmosphere, and I was just simply imagining this stuff. Maybe I was stressed out about building the studio or something like that just caused me to think a lot of these things were happening. But unfortunately, it seems like a lot of the activity has died down. But I did do a little bit of further research on that, and I think I mentioned a little bit of this on the show. But there was a gentleman that owned this house before I did. That he was an Irish guy that immigrated over here from Ireland, and I guess he was a multi-millionaire. He owned several of the houses in this area, and he didn't live in any of them. I don't think. It was just kind of his pet project, and he would go around finding old materials that people weren't using, bent nails, and he'd bring them back and straighten them out. And he built this house, or he remodeled this house with those bent nails and those found parts. So it's kind of how I live my life a little bit. I love to reuse things, and especially in some of the art that I've done in the past, that it's definitely using known materials, found materials rather, not known, found materials. So anyway, it all kind of ties in with what I was doing here in the studio. Is reusing a lot of stuff. So maybe there was just some sort of tie there that just made it was more emotional than something that was physically taking place. But great question. Thanks for asking. It's been a while since I followed up on that. So yeah, there was something strange going on for a while, and it just seemed to die down. Maybe it'll be back. We have another question, but before I do that, I want to let everybody know that we opened the show last week with the Loch Ness Monster call. And in that research, I was digging around trying to find some older clips, some stuff that people haven't necessarily seen, on the social medias. And I found a film from the early '80s, and I watched the first 20 minutes of this movie, and it was so bad it was great. The film was called The Loch Ness Horror, and I watched the first 20 minutes. I'm like, this is too good, so I stopped it, and I texted my friends Justin Zenger and David Flora, who helped me with the roundtables, or do the roundtables with me. And I'm like, guys, we got to assemble. We got to watch this movie. So we just released today the Knights at the Round Table version of the Loch Ness Horror from 1981, 1982. That has two different dates. So you can find that over on Patreon. I highly recommend it. It was pretty hilarious to watch, and it was pretty hilarious to record. So I think that's an episode you guys are going to enjoy. Okay, so moving on here, it looks like we have another question. This one's from Sean, and he wants to know if I've had any cryptid sightings. And they're fascinated with the Dogman and Sasquatch, specifically in Texas. Well, Texas is certainly full of all sorts of strange encounters down there. I think of the Lake Worth monster, first of all, the white goat man Sasquatch type creature in the late 60s down there. Have I had any sightings myself? The only one I've had is kind of the thing that got me into all of this, which was my ABC, my alien black cat sighting from when I was a child. I'm sure any longtime listener of the show has heard this 100 times, but I'll do a really quick recap. Essentially, when I was a kid, me and my brother and a friend of ours, we were kind of roaming the woods behind our parents' house, and this was in southeast Ohio. There was hundreds of acres back there for us to roam, of all old growth forests. So this was pristine area that was hardly touched. So we were back there messing around one day, and we heard some noises across the hillside, and look up, and there was a black panther, for lack of a better term, running across the hillside. And we tried to cut it off and catch it. It was just simply too fast. But we excitedly told my dad about it when he got home from work that day, and that's when he declared he'd seen the same thing. So that kind of gave me the instant validation I needed. Well, if an adult saw it, and I might trust what my dad says, so it's got to be real. And that kind of led me on a path. I'd asked everybody I knew, you ever seen anything like this? And then other people would tell stories and kind of lead me down different rabbit holes. And that sort of got me started in all of this. It at least got me my first book at the library, and I think that kind of opened the floodgates. But that sighting was one of the ones that sticks with me. That's the only cryptid sighting I can think that I've ever had, and I'd love to have more. Quite frankly, I welcome the opportunity to see any of these cryptids in the flesh. Hopefully through a windshield, but somewhere in the flesh. Well, folks, I don't know. That's all the questions I have. Does anybody want to chime in? I'll give you a couple chances here before we cut this thing short. I really enjoy doing this, especially if people are willing to be interactive and want to come in. Oh, we got a guest. I'll get to you in 1 second. So I really enjoy doing this. I think we're going to try to do an after show every week. I don't know exactly what day it'll be. We'll figure all that out, but this is going pretty well. So thank you, everybody, for contributing here. So our guest, we're bringing them in right now. Looks like it's Tom. Tom is joining in 3, 2, 1. Hi, Tom. How's it going?
Eric,
Where are you calling from, Tom?
I'm actually calling from Quarryville, Pennsylvania, which is a little south of Lancaster.
Gotcha. Southeast Pennsylvania, right?
Yes, very much so. You mentioned like the one of the stories, the laughter in the woods. That kind of just stuck out to me when I heard it, because instantly I just kind of thought it reminded me of like the Skinwalker
Yeah.
reports that you hear, and how they'll mimic babies crying or women crying to try to lure people out. So I'm like, okay, if those creatures exist, maybe they would think laughter might try to lure in a potential victim,
How terrifying is that concept?
right?
I mean, something
No,
out there laughing in the darkness anyway is terrifying, but the fact that it's doing so to lure you out there is even worse.
absolutely. And I grew up in the boonies, so there was plenty of like weird noises at night that you'd hear from like the woods and
Yeah.
everything.
Oh, of course, of course. And imagine my surprise as I'm doing research on. It was actually Sarah's call from Massachusetts, and it found all this stuff about hyenas in that state, and it instantly dawned on me. And I just happened to have a call in my call list for this week that was the laughing in the woods. I'm like, man, hyenas are known for their laughing. It just kind of all fell together. That's not half as spooky as the concept of a skinwalker out there trying to bring people out into the forest.
No, and you mentioned like ones, things that make you question your own existence, and then you read about like skinwalker encounters where it's somebody that they thought was with their party the entire time until they realize that they never met this person before, and then there's something inhuman about them.
Oh yeah, that's the worst.
Yeah,
The story's also kind of shrouded in mystery. There's not a lot of information out there too, so all those little blanks, your imagination fills all those in. It just makes this even worse than it is to begin with.
absolutely.
Spooky stuff. Do you have a personal story you'd like to share with us, Tom?
Like not a personal story, but like I can share about like our kind of like local cryptid in our area is
Oh
kind
yeah,
of
I
like
love that.
it's called the apple snitch.
Oh yes.
And it's like a diminutive Bigfoot like creature that's known for like just stealing apples from orchards in the area. And it, like there's different like background. Some think it's like the terminology comes from a mixture of the words apple and witch or apple and snitch. But regardless, like there's actually a town in the area that holds like an annual apple snitch festival.
That's all. Have you been to the festival?
Not yet, but it's on my bucket list.
Oh man, it sounds like a good time. I'm sure they have all sorts of folky art and weird Bigfoot apple dishes and stuff like that.
Absolutely, they're big on Apple products here in
Oh,
South Central Pennsylvania.
and that's Amish country down there too, right?
Yes, I actually live next to like a few Amish farms.
Yeah, that's. I wonder how much that influence has on the name Apple Snitch. It just kind of sounds like an Amish word to me. I grew up near Amish country myself, so I've spent a lot of time with the Amish. I've worked with them, and it just sounds like one of those words that they would use.
Yeah, definitely.
Fun stuff. Have you ever seen the Apple Snitch? I guess no. You probably would have told us, right?
No, the closest kind of like the biggest kind of paranormal-ish encounter I can think of is when I was living at my family's old house in the middle of the night, and like when you used to do the dishes before, you had a dishwasher and you put them in the drying rack, and every now and then they would
Sure.
settle. I just remember I was watching TV one night, and like it was that settling noise, but it was like really loud, and I swore I could hear like two bipedal feet running across like the
Oh,
kitchen. Of course, I go out there. There's nothing there, but this part of Pennsylvania I live in is also known as gnome country with gnome sightings historically.
oh,
So it's like,
yeah. I wasn't aware of that. Most of the gnome sightings I hear of are actually out here in California. I wasn't
oh,
familiar with any of the ones. That's not the Tommy Knockers, is it? Is that the same legend? Is that
that
something?
could be because there's coal mines to the north of us, so that could be kind of similar.
That's always a creepy legend. I don't know a lot about that one, but I know Stephen King wrote a book about it, so that's pretty much all you need to know.
Yeah, it was kind of like it was a spirit that warned miners that a cave-in was going to occur shortly, is from what I
Yeah, like
understand.
so, like a knocking sound or something they would hear in the cave, or I'm sorry, in the mine. Is that correct?
Yes.
Spooky stuff. Well, Tom, anything else you want to bring up before we move on?
That's it for me. Just I enjoy your show. It's been you and some other podcasters have just been really great to listen to as I readjust to getting back into the office every day after
Oh yeah,
being for a year and a half. So thank you for that.
of course, we appreciate it, Tom. Thank you.
Yep.
Take care.
You too. Thank you.
Now, if you bear with me, I'll figure out how to end this call or connection. There we go. Still learning this process here. Still learning this app. So anyway, well, guys, that's been my half hour here. Oh, we have another person. I'll hold on. We'll bring this person in 1 second. Oh, Sean. All right. Sean, are you there? It looks like we might have lost him. Oh, here he is. Sean, are you there?
Hey, hear me?
We can hear something. Sounds like there's maybe a bad connection. Let's try that again. Yeah, Sean, I don't think your phone's working. Maybe that's working right there. Let's try that. Go ahead, Sean. Okay. I think it's not working. Maybe try calling back in, Sean.
Okay.
Oh, wait.
There we
Hold
go.
on. Don't leave. I got you. There you are.
I'm
there
here.
you are.
Can you
It's
hear me?
working now.
Okay. Hey, Derek. This is Sean from Amarillo, Texas. Thank you for answering my cryptid call about the dog, or question about the dog man. So my son and I are paranormal investigators up here in the Amarillo area, and we listened to your podcast while we were going out to Broken Bow Asylum in Broken Bow, Oklahoma, and that's kind of Bigfoot country for Oklahoma, and that's out there where I think it's the governor talked about Hobino, I believe, north of there. It's about 55 miles to the north of Broken Bow, and it's a spot where Bigfoot allegedly attacked some folks. And I was just wondering if you've ever looked into that or have talked about that in any of your past shows.
Yeah, I think I was first introduced to that before I started my show, listening to Sasquatch Chronicles, Wes over there. And I believe they refer to that as the Siege of Hanobia, I think is how they pronounce that town, Hanobia, something like that. Either way, it was a family that lived in this cabin out there, this house out there, and every night these creatures would come closer and closer, and they used floodlights and that kind of thing to deter them. And I think at one point they actually shot and killed one of these creatures, and before they could even collect the body, the rest of the creatures, whatever these things are, collected the body, took it into the forest, and the family moved shortly after that, left everything in the house, just took off. That's the story that I know. Do you know anything further than that, Sean?
No, I was just curious if it was actively being researched by any of the Bigfoot organizations in the country.
Well, I know that there's a research group somewhere in Oklahoma. They have a top secret area. I think it's called Area X, and I believe that's the North American Bigfoot, North American Wood Ape Conservancy, I think is the name of that group. But they've been stationed in Oklahoma for a very long time, a decade at least, if not longer than that. So there is some sort of research going on in the state.
Okay, well, nobody's claimed that purse, I guess. I haven't heard of anybody winning the money.
Well, I think it'll be headline news if it does happen. But what do you think about that, the idea of putting up money as a bounty for the creature?
I think it's good tourism publicity for the state. Yeah. I'm surprised more states where Bigfoot's more well known haven't jumped on that bandwagon, honestly. Washington, Oregon come to mind.
I feel like there's maybe a double-edged sword.
I don't know if we would jump on that bandwagon up in Michigan.
The thing I fear...
But I was just interested with that. Also,
I was just going to say, the thing I fear is that you put a bounty for a two-legged upright creature out in the forest, and next thing you know, anybody wearing camouflage is going to find themselves getting fired at. Would be my big concern there. But what were you going to say, Sean? Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to ask you if you've ever had a disembodied voice experience. As a rookie paranormal investigator in 2019, that was my first sort of spooky experience was I had an intelligent response to one of my EVP sessions where I was just asked if it knew my name, not expecting anything, and there was a group of 5 of us, and we all heard a lady whisper. After we reviewed the clip, which I have on Facebook, you could hear her say, "Who cares? Get out of this room! Get out of this room!"
Oh,
So
wow.
that's my spookiest
Wow.
experience in the last few years.
Yeah, that sounds like a good one. What was the quality of the EVP? Was it
And I've
like
been
a
waiting
classic?
since for that. It's pretty good. I can send it to you. I've got it on a video clip. I was using a full spectrum camera, like a portable cell phone that had been hacked.
Oh, okay,
So
yeah.
I'm happy to send it to you with the boosted audio or just a MP3 if you wanted to listen to it.
Yeah. Please send it. I should probably do like an EVP episode or something like that, because I have a handful that people have sent me over the years that I'm kind of not sure what to do with. And that was kind of the thing with Para Weekly that I started doing too, because I had all these videos people were sending. I'm thinking, how do I get these out? How do I get people to see these? So maybe I could share it on there if that's okay.
That would be excellent. I just finished binging those over the weekend, so that's a great show.
Oh, awesome.
Enjoy it.
I appreciate that. We're learning. We're getting that process under control. We're getting some new cameras, some new equipment. So it's going to continue to improve as we move along. To answer your question, disembodied voices, I'm sure something like that has happened where I've noticed something. But the one that sticks out to me was I was in my brother's house. He had bought when he graduated the police academy. He bought just a little house in my hometown of 2,000 people. And the family that lived there before, there was an older couple, and the gentleman passed away in the house, I believe. So either way, this was years later. I was back visiting, and we went to the high school football game, which you could walk to from his house. And we all walked back. It's 10 o'clock at night. We're all standing in the foyer area of this little house. And in the back room, we just hear somebody whistling a tune, just going to town. And I didn't pay much attention to it at first. And then one by one, we all kind of look at each other, and all the adults are there. The only person missing is I think she was maybe a year and a half, 2 years old at the time, niece, who was in that back room. And
Wow.
she certainly wasn't whistling some old-fashioned tune that we were hearing. So my brother's just like, well, that's the ghost. I think he had a name for it, which I've forgotten since then, but he moved out of the house years ago. But he's like, yeah, that's the ghost. That's what we deal with. And he had a thing where whenever they did dishes, there seemed to be some sort of activity. So he always thought that the gentleman that died there, maybe his wife, or maybe he was doing dishes, who knows. And that was just like a happy time for him, or just something that there's some sort of connection. So every time anybody in the family was doing any kind of dishes at the sink, something strange would take place behind them.
They sound like they were helping. They enjoyed the experience.
I think so, yeah. It kind of helped to have me in the family where they could ask questions or whatever, and I seem to know at least a little bit, something to tell them, and it made them feel a little bit more comfortable. But it was always fun to go back and visit, because we did an EVP session as well, and we actually captured, that was the only time I've ever captured an EVP, and we're sitting there talking about how his dog was making sounds, and all of a sudden in the background we hear something go, dog, like a long draw.
Oh, wow.
So that was kind of cool.
I love it.
Yeah, of course, like everybody else, we lost that tape, and it's gone now. It's in the ether somewhere, so that's how it works.
Well, thank you so much for your program. The last thing I wanted to mention is I can send this too is your Dogman. I think you had the Dogman episode where you played the old Dogman song from 1987.
Oh, yes.
It inspired me as a heavy metal guitar player to write a thrash metal song about the Dogman. So I wrote a song called The Dogman of Doom. And I was hoping
brilliant.
you could check it out sometime. See what you think.
Yeah, send it to me.
You might get a kick out of it.
Yeah, send it to me for sure.
All right, I'll get it.
Yeah, definitely send that, Sean.
All right, well, we'll keep on listening to the podcast as we go. We're going back to Broken Bow next year, and we're spending 2 nights staying inside the asylum, so we'll be listening to you again.
Beautiful. Let us know if you see anything.
Will do, sir. Thank you so much. Have a great night.
Awesome, Sean. You too. Take care.
All right, thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay. I have to. Sarah's here helping me figure out how to use this app, because I am technologically declined. Not declined. That's not the right word. Okay, there we go. We're back to normal. Well, folks, I can either wrap it up, or if people want to keep talking, I have some time to kill. I can keep going. Either way, I'm out of questions on my list here, so I can ramble on, which you guys seem to enjoy, or we can bring a guest in and we can talk on. I will say, in the meantime, circling back to try to keep this somewhat close to last week's episode, uh, there was a little inside baseball with some of these stories. As you know, I tell people on the show that if you're from out of the country, you should email me your call. Well, I get a lot of those, believe it or not, and they really built up in my email. So a couple weeks ago, I sat down and did some digging, and there was some in there from a couple years ago. That's how many I have, and there were some really good ones in there from a couple years ago. So I felt pretty embarrassed that they sat in there as long as they did, but I was super happy to get them out, and that includes the Nessie call and Sarah's uh, black dog sighting that she had. Both of those were fairly older calls that had just been hanging around for a while. And to be quite honest, I get a lot of calls, probably anywhere from 5 to 10 submissions a day on average. So they really add up. And it takes a lot of work to keep the library curated and organized so that we can actually pull out calls when we need them. But I'm working on ways to get some of these calls processed faster and faster, and there's so many good ones out there. I just got to get them shared. So I was rambling, and I had a point to this. Oh, it was the fact that that all these calls were a little bit older, but please don't let that discourage you from calling in, because you never know when I'm going to play a call. Like, it's a lot of times I pick based on, I haven't played a Bigfoot call in a couple episodes, so let's dig and find a Bigfoot call. So that's usually how I make the selections. I try to run the gamut. I try to get a wide spectrum of all the paranormal facets, so that if you are a fan of cryptids, there's something for you. If you're a fan of ghosts, there's something for you, aliens, and so on and so on. So I do a lot of work to try to keep it diversified. Well, folks, it looks like there's nobody coming in on the chat here. I want to thank all 69 of you for coming in here. This is amazing. I can't believe that. Honestly, can't believe that many people followed me over here. So thank you so much for doing that. Like I said a little bit ago, this is something I think I'm going to try to do, if not after every show, after a lot of them, because I want to reach out to you guys. I want to give you a platform to add to these stories, to add to some of this knowledge, and like our guest did this evening, just tell us about themselves and about where they live. And I think this is a perfect way to extend the show and to get a little more, there's a little more spookiness out in our world. So again, thank you all so much for tuning in. I will announce on this week's show when we're going to be doing this again. It'll probably be next week sometime, and we'll try to solidify a day where it happens at the same day, same time every time, so you guys can make your way in here and catch the after show. So until next time, I want to thank you all so much for joining me. Keep it spooky out there, and we'll be seeing you.